Have you figured out what Xobni is yet? I'll spell it out for you just in case you think you misheard me. Xobni.
Yeah, it literally looks like a typo.
Right. It sounds like some, I don't know, newly discovered exoplanet, maybe a prescription medication with this alarmingly long list of side effects,
Yeah.
but it's not. It was a real tech company.
A very real company.
Yeah, a company that real people poured their blood, sweat, tears, and frankly, a whole lot of venture capital money into.
And it stands as this monument to what is arguably the ultimate founder's nightmare. Because, I mean, you spend years engineering the perfect product, right?
Yeah.
Writing flawless code, building a beautiful interface,
And
then
it's just ruin it at the finish line.
Yeah, exactly. At the absolute finish line, you slap a name on the box that instantly becomes this massive, impenetrable barrier to entry for the exact people you want to buy it.
And that is really the core tension we're looking at today. What if the brand name you painstakingly chose, the one you spent weeks agonizing over in a conference room thinking it was just incredibly clever, is actually driving your customers away?
Making them feel totally clueless instead of intrigued.
Exactly. So today we are bringing you a deep dive into the introduction of this just deeply necessary book. It's called Hello, My Name is Awesome, How to Create Brand Names That Stick by Alexandra Watkins.
And the mission for our discussion today is pretty straightforward, but the implications are massive for, well, anyone interested in business, entrepreneurship, or even just understanding why certain brands lodge themselves in our brains while others just vanish.
Poof, gone.
Right. We're going to examine why traditional, heavily mathematical or so-called scientific naming methods are just fundamentally broken. And more importantly, we're going to outline a completely different approach.
A much simpler one.
Yeah, a simple, emotionally driven framework that creates names that stick instantly.
Yeah.
Because, as Watkins notes right from the jump, your brand name makes a critical first impression. I mean, in a lot of business contexts, it makes way more of an impression than your shoes or your suit.
It's the absolute front door to your enterprise.
That's exactly what it is.
But to understand how to build that welcoming front door, we first kind of have to spend some time looking at the bizarre and honestly hilarious ways people get it completely wrong.
Oh, yeah. The book starts with a great example of this.
Right. The author starts by highlighting a struggle she knows intimately. Her own name, Alexandra. Now, on its face, hello, my name is Alexandra. That sounds really simple, right?
I think so. It's a classic, globally recognized name.
But the reality of her day-to-day life is just this constant stream of tiny grading corrections. People look at Alexandra and they say Alexandria.
Or Alexandria.
Or Alexia. And like most bafflingly of all, they frequently resort to the 100% male version, Alexander.
Which is just wild.
I think anyone listening right now who has a name that deviates even slightly from, the local norm knows exactly what that feels like. The heavy sigh you let out when the barista calls out the wrong pronunciation.
Oh, totally. Or that tiny spike of annoyance when someone replies to your email and misspells your name.
When it is literally sitting right there in your email signature.
Right there.
It's just, you develop this sort of low-grade exhaustion from having to constantly explain your own identity. But here is the critical pivot for us today. Humans cannot help the names they're given at birth. We're saddled with them.
The businesses.
Yes, businesses actively, voluntarily choose to inflict this exact same exhaustion on themselves and their customers. Watkins actually calls this the trifecta of trouble.
It is a brilliant distillation of the problem.
Yeah.
Because a brand name that hits this trifecta of trouble does three specific things. It's tricky to spell, it's difficult to pronounce, and it is hard to remember.
The unholy trinity.
Exactly. And if you intentionally saddle a new enterprise with a name that has even one of these fatal flaws, you are putting a major handicap on your growth.
And if you hit all three,
then you're essentially starting a marathon with a bowling ball chained to your ankle.
And the book doesn't just, speak in hypotheticals. Watkins brings receipts. She lists these absolute head-scratchers that highly paid executives literally sat in boardrooms and approved.
Oh, the list is staggering.
Sur la table, EAMS, Flickr, Saucony, Yukonuba, and of course, Xobni. Like, when you look at that list, it feels like a prank.
It really does.
Yeah.
But the psychology behind why these names get chosen, that's where we really need to pause. Because we have to assume positive intent, right?
Sure, they aren't evil.
Right. The marketing teams behind these names are not malicious. They aren't sitting around plotting how to confuse the American consumer. It happens because of this very specific, insular corporate dynamic. I like to call it whiteboard disease.
Oh, whiteboard disease. Tell me about that.
So, At the time of creation, the founders are staring at a whiteboard, completely detached from the reality of a busy, distracted consumer. They start playing with syllables, dropping vowels, mashing up Latin roots.
Thinking they're absolute geniuses.
Yes. They convince themselves that an obscure or mathematically constructed name is pure genius. They fall completely in love with their own inside joke.
They feel like they've solved a puzzle, and they assume the customer will share that exact same thrill of discovery when they see it.
Precisely.
Uh-huh.
But the tragic reality of that whiteboard session is the long tail of consequences. Because for years, sometimes decades, these brands are forced into a defensive posture.
Always explaining themselves.
Constantly. They have to spell their domain name out phonetically over the phone. No, that's Flickrs, F-L-I-C-K-R, no E at the end.
Or they have to run entire ad campaigns just to teach people how to say their name. Like Saucony. Is it Saucony? Is it Socony?
Right. They are essentially apologizing for their own brand identity at every single customer touch point.
Okay, but let me push back on this for a second. Because if spelling and pronunciation are these ultimate unforgiving gatekeepers of success, how on earth do you explain Haagen-Dazs?
Haagen-Dazs, the classic counterargument.
Well, yeah. It violates every single rule in the trifecta of trouble. It's a spelling nightmare. It has an umlaut that makes literally no grammatical sense in Danish. I mean, it's a completely fabricated nonsense word.
Completely made up.
Right, and no one in America knew how to pronounce it when it launched, yet it is a massive, globally recognized premium brand. Doesn't that prove that a weird, difficult name actually makes you more memorable? Because you stand out.
I mean, that is the silver bullet defense that every naming agency hears when a client wants to justify a terrible name. But Haagen-Dazs is a massive outlier. It succeeded because of a very specific historical context and, frankly, an enormous amount of capital.
What was the context?
Well, when Reuben Mattis invented that name in the early 1960s, he was employing a strategy called foreign branding. In post-war America, European-sounding products carried this inherent, unspoken promise of old-world craftsmanship and premium quality.
Ah, so the weirdness was the point.
Exactly. The laut, the difficult pronunciation, those were intentional signals of luxury in a market that was dominated by cheap, simple, American-sounding ice creams. And furthermore, they spent decades and millions upon millions of dollars in advertising to basically brute force that name into the cultural lexicon.
So they bought their way out of the trifecta of trouble.
They absolutely did. But here's the thing. If you are a modern startup, an independent consultant, or a new tech platform today, you do not have 40 years and $100 million in ad spend to force people to memorize a nonsense word.
No, definitely not.
You're operating in an entirely different reality. We have to talk about something called processing fluency.
Okay, break that down because this feels like the invisible engine driving the whole problem.
Yeah, so processing fluency is a concept in cognitive psychology. It basically measures how easy it is for our brains to process and decode information.
Okay.
The human brain is fundamentally a metabolic energy-saving machine. When it encounters a word that is familiar, easy to read, and easy to pronounce, it requires very little cognitive effort.
It's just smooth.
Right, and because it's easy to process, the brain subconsciously attaches positive attributes to it. The information feels familiar, it feels safe, and it feels trustworthy.
Just glides right in.
Glides.
Yeah.
But when the brain encounters a word like Xobni or Yukonuba, it hits a massive cognitive speed bump. It takes milliseconds longer to decode the letters, figure out the phonetics, search the memory banks for a reference.
Trying to figure out what the heck it's looking at.
Exactly. And that slight delay, that cognitive friction, triggers a completely different subconscious reaction. The brain flags the information as novel, overly complex, and potentially risky.
Oh, wow. Risky.
Yeah. And in consumer behavior, risky is the absolute last emotion you want attached to a new product before the customer has even read what the product does.
That makes so much sense. It's like designing a multi-million-dollar, incredibly welcoming front door for your business, but putting this ridiculously complicated, unmarked puzzle lock on the handle.
Yes, perfect analogy.
If your customer has to work to get inside, if they have to expend mental calories just to solve a riddle, to speak your name out loud, you are turning them away. You're inducing fatigue before the transaction even begins.
And in today's attention economy, that cognitive friction equals instant abandonment. People are overloaded. They will not do the work to figure out your clever puzzle. They'll just move on to the competitor with the name they can actually say out loud without feeling foolish.
Which brings up a very practical, very modern test that Watkins provides in the book. And I think it perfectly encapsulates this idea of processing fluency in the real world.
The voice test.
Yes. If Siri or Alexa or whatever voice recognition software you use cannot spell your brand name correctly when you say it naturally out loud, you have a massive, potentially fatal problem.
It is an incredibly pragmatic filter. And it really speaks to how consumer behavior has shifted, right? From visual search to voice search. We don't just type anymore, we talk to our devices.
Hey, Siri, find me.
Exactly. Imagine trying to tell your phone, get directions to Xobni, or search for Flickr. The technology relies on standard acoustic phonetics. It's going to auto-correct your request to the standard dictionary spelling of the word Flickr.
And your customer is going to end up on a completely different website.
Yep.
You're literally sending your organic traffic you probably paid a lot of money to acquire directly to a dead end, all because you thought dropping a vowel was edgy.
The economics of a bad name are staggering when you view it through that lens, because every time an autocorrect reroutes a search, you lose a sale. Every time an email bounces because the customer forgot your weird spelling, you lose a lead.
So if the goal isn't to be clever in that, tricky puzzle box vowel dropping sort of way, what is the alternative? How do we actually create something that bypasses that cognitive friction?
Well, to answer that, we really need to look at who Alexandra Watkins is. Because she isn't just some armchair theorist making observations. Her methodology is battle-tested at the absolute highest levels.
Right. Her firm is called Eat My Words.
Yes, she's the founder of Eat My Words, which is a highly sought-after, nationally recognized naming firm. And we're talking about an agency that works with massive blue-chip clients. Disney, Microsoft, Wrigley, Frito-Lay.
Heavy hitters.
Exactly. These are corporations with effectively unlimited marketing resources. They could hire anyone. They could hire rooms full of data scientists to generate names, yet they hire her firm for a very specific, shockingly simple secret.
And what is that multi-million-dollar secret?
It's this. The absolute best brand names are names that people get and like.
That's it.
That's it. You want your name to make the customer feel clever. You do not want a name that makes them feel clueless.
I love that. Make them feel clever, not clueless. But this point really forces us to examine the entire naming industry, doesn't it? Because what Watkins is advocating for here is a total, unapologetic rejection of what her own industry usually tries to sell.
Oh, absolutely. If a startup goes to a traditional high-end naming agency, they are rarely pitched simple emotional words. Instead, they get pitched what Watkins openly calls junk science.
The terminology these agencies use is honestly hilarious, but also kind of intimidating. She talks about agencies selling verbal identity engineering or computational linguistics.
Right.
It sounds like you need a PhD in theoretical physics just to name a dog walking business.
It is deliberately dense, and it's designed to sound expensive and rigorous because corporate executives love data.
Right, of course.
They are terrified of subjectivity. And naming a company is a terrifying, highly subjective process. So when an agency comes in and says, oh, we don't use emotion, we use a proprietary algorithmic matrix to mathematically construct the perfect phonetic sequence.
The executives just breathe a sigh of relief.
Exactly. They feel safe. They think, it's science. If it fails, we can blame the algorithm.
It's the illusion of safety. They literally take a perfectly good functioning word, feed it into a computer, subtract a few random letters, and present the client with a word that looks like the leftover Scrabble tiles at the end of a really frustrating game.
Watkins refers to this as linguistic voodoo. And the reason it consistently, spectacularly fails in the real world is that it completely ignores the one thing that actually drives human behavior.
Which is emotion.
Yes, emotion. You cannot math your way into a customer's heart. A computational linguistics engine does not understand nuance or humor or nostalgia or joy. It just understands data.
I want everyone listening to genuinely think about that for a second. Think about your favorite brands. Do you fall in love with a brand because you read their press release and realize they used a rigorous, double-blind linguistic methodology to invent their moniker?
Probably not.
No. Or do you love a brand because the name just clicks, because it evokes a feeling, because it makes you smile the first time you hear it?
And this is exactly why the Xobni example is the perfect cautionary tale.
Yes. I promise we would reveal what it actually means.
Time for the big reveal.
For those who haven't deciphered the puzzle yet, Xobni is the word inbox, spelled completely backward.
And when you understand the context of that whiteboard session, you can see exactly how it happened. It looks so undeniably clever when you write it out in dry erase marker.
The founders probably high-fived. Look, We make software for the inbox, so we flip the word inbox. It's subversive, it's techie.
We're geniuses. But out in the harsh reality of the real world, the customer isn't in that conference room. The customer isn't given the decoder ring. They don't see the backward spelling. They just see an unpronounceable, hostile string of consonants.
It is an inside joke that the customer is explicitly excluded from. And psychologically, humans hate feeling excluded.
We despise it.
When you present someone with a joke they don't understand, they don't feel intrigued, they feel stupid, and then they feel resentful. The takeaway here is profound. You must evaluate your business name based on its emotional resonance and its approachability.
Not on how mathematically unique it looks on paper.
Right. If you have to explain the joke, it's not funny. If you have to explain your brand name, it is fundamentally broken.
Exactly.
But wait. If she is completely rejecting the linguists, the data scientists, and the algorithmic approaches, the people who literally study words and data for a living, whose methodology is she actually trusting, what is her foundation for these massive brand identities?
Well, her foundation is the exact opposite of academic linguistics. Her toolset comes entirely from the trenches of advertising.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, her approach is purely conceptual, stemming from more than 2 decades working as an advertising copywriter at prestigious agencies like Ogilvy and Mather.
I find this parallel incredibly compelling because the connection between writing a great advertisement and naming a company isn't immediately obvious, but once she explains it, it feels undeniable.
Think about the fundamental purpose of a brilliant ad headline, right? A headline exists in a highly competitive environment. A magazine page, a crowded highway billboard, a scrolling social media feed.
You have seconds.
Less than seconds. Its job is to arrest your attention, bypass your logical defenses, generate immediate buzz, and spark a desire to purchase. And it achieves this by making a lightning-fast emotional connection.
It's like a micropoem. And a brand name is essentially the smallest possible, most highly compressed ad headline you will ever write. It has to tell a story and evoke a feeling in maybe 2 or 3 syllables.
Yes.
She uses examples later in the book that perfectly illustrate this. Think of kryptonite bike locks, or obsession perfume, or leapfrog educational toys.
Let's actually look at the mechanics of why those work. Take kryptonite. When you hear the name kryptonite, your brain doesn't have to decode a new set of syllables. It immediately accesses an existing semantic network in your brain.
Right, from Superman.
Exactly. You already know what kryptonite is from pop culture. It's an indestructible alien substance that can defeat even Superman. So by naming the bike lock kryptonite, the brand instantly borrows all of that existing neurological architecture.
You instantly know the product is impossibly tough.
They didn't have to spend millions educating you. They just activated what was already in your head.
That is so smart. If you treat your brand name as an ad headline, it completely upends how you approach the naming process. You stop trying to invent entirely new syllables from scratch, and you start trying to leverage the existing associations in your customer's brain. You basically borrow their emotions to fund your brand.
It's highly efficient marketing.
Yeah.
But to do this effectively, Watkins knows she can't just leave us with abstract advertising theory.
Right, founders need a system.
Exactly. They need a concrete system. So she introduces an objective filter for evaluating any potential name. It is a guiding philosophy that she sums up in one brilliant sentence. A name should make you smile instead of scratch your head.
I love the simplicity of that. It immediately frames the binary outcome of a name. Does it create delight or does it create confusion?
And from that one sentence, she builds the entire framework for the book, the Smile and Scratch Test.
This framework is vital because it solves one of the biggest problems in corporate branding, which is subjectivity. Like we discussed earlier, naming is often driven by whoever is the loudest person in the room saying, I just don't like it, or I think it sounds weird.
Right, the CEO's wife doesn't like the letter Q, so we have to start over.
Exactly. The Smile and Scratch framework takes the emotion out of the evaluation process, ironically enough, by creating an objective, actionable checklist. It democratizes the process.
It does. Now, even the most left-brained, data-obsessed engineer can look at a proposed name, run it through the checklist, and objectively state, well, this name fails on point 3.
So let's get into the actual anatomy of this framework. We are going to go deep into every single letter here because understanding the mechanics of these acronyms is really the key to the whole kingdom. Let's start with what we want. Smile. These are the 5 qualities of a super sticky name.
Okay, so the S in SMILE stands for suggestive. A great name does not have to be literal, and it really shouldn't be purely descriptive, but it must suggest something about your brand's core experience, its benefit, or its scale.
The distinction between suggestive and descriptive is where I see so many founders stumble. They think they need to tell the customer exactly what they do in the name.
And that just leads to incredibly boring names. The classic towering example she uses for a suggestive name is Amazon.
Oh, that's a great one.
In the early days, Jeff Bezos didn't call his company bookbarn.com or theonlinebookstore.com. He named it after the Amazon, the largest, most voluminous river in the world.
It doesn't literally say, we sell books.
No, but it powerfully suggests an unfathomably massive selection. A relentless flow of goods. It paints a picture without being tedious. It leaves room for the imagination.
Which flows perfectly into the M, which stands for meaningful. A super sticky name has to possess meaning, but the crucial caveat here is that it must be meaningful to your audience, not just to you as the founder.
Yes, this is the vanity trap.
The vanity trap.
Yeah. A founder will name their company after their golden retriever, or they'll combine the first two syllables of their children's names.
Oh, like Cadenly Consulting.
Exactly. That is deeply meaningful to the founder. But to a consumer looking for accounting software or a landscaping service, it means absolutely nothing. It is a dead end.
So what makes it meaningful to the audience?
A meaningful name connects with the customer's values, their aspirations, or the specific problem they're trying to solve. If your target demographic doesn't instantly grasp the reference, it isn't meaningful in a business context.
Okay, that makes sense. That brings us to I, which is imagery. This is arguably the most powerful tool in the arsenal. A great name is visually evocative. When you hear it, you see something.
We really need to look at the evolutionary biology of memory here, because the human visual cortex is incredibly powerful. We are evolutionarily wired to remember physical landscapes, faces, and objects, things that kept us alive.
Right.
We are not naturally wired to memorize abstract sequences of phonetic symbols, which is what written language is. The brain remembers pictures exponentially better than abstract text.
So when you give the brain a name that is also a picture, you're basically giving it a cheat code for memory.
Precisely. Take a brand name like Timberland. When you hear that word, you aren't memorizing syllables. Your brain is literally painting a picture of rugged boots, mossy trees, cold weather, the outdoors.
You see the product in its element.
Exactly. Conversely, what do you see when you hear Accenture or Novartis?
Gray office building, nothing really.
You see nothing. There's no visual hook. Your brain has nowhere to hang the memory, so it simply discards it.
Wow. Okay, I want to talk about the L, because this is the one that I think translates most directly to saving actual dollars in a marketing budget. L stands for legs.
Yes. A name with legs is a name that lends itself to a theme. It provides extended mileage for your brand.
Meaning you can build on it.
Exactly. It allows for endless wordplay, visual motifs, and creative campaigns.
If your brand has legs, you don't have to constantly reinvent the wheel every time you need to run a promotion. The name does the heavy lifting. Think about a brand like Red Bull.
Oh, a perfect example.
Right. The name itself has imagery, but it also has incredible legs. They can talk about charging, stamping, horns, arenas, giving you wings. The semantic cluster around the word bull gives their marketing team an endless supply of concepts.
If they were called Caffeine Liquid Max,
Yeah.
they would have nowhere to go creatively.
A name with legs is a gift that keeps on giving to your marketing department.
It really is. And finally, the engine that powers the entire SMILE framework, the E, stands for emotional. As we discussed with the advertising connection, the name must move people.
I feel like business schools teach us that B2B and consumer purchases are rational decisions based on price and features. But Watkins is arguing that this is fundamentally false, right?
It is entirely false. Neurologically speaking, the limbic system, which is the emotional center of the brain, is intimately tied to decision-making. People buy on emotion and they justify with logic.
Even in business.
Even in high-stakes corporate software purchases, emotion plays a massive role. Does this software make the buyer feel safe? Does it make them feel innovative? Does the name of the consultant make the executive feel like they are making a smart, modern choice?
So the name sets the emotional baseline.
Exactly. If your name taps into a positive feeling, whether that's nostalgia, excitement, comfort, or empowerment, you have bypassed the logical objections and you're halfway to closing the sale.
So that is the North Star. That is what you're aiming for. SMILE. Suggestive, meaningful, imagery, legs, emotional.
But creating a good name is only half the battle.
Right. The other half is avoiding a disastrous name. Which brings us to the flip side of the coin. The 7 deadly sins of naming. This is the SCRT-CH test. if your proposed name commits these sins, you need to literally scratch it off the whiteboard and start over.
Okay, so the S in SCH brings us back to our earlier conversation. It stands for spelling challenged.
If it looks like a typo, it's a liability.
And we cannot emphasize enough how damaging this is. We already discussed the Siri and voice search test, but it extends to every aspect of the business. Think about the friction of telling someone your email address at a loud networking event.
Oh, it's like the word focus, but with a fee and a Q.
Exactly. It's a nightmare. It immediately signals to the market that you're trying too hard to be different, and it guarantees lost correspondence and lost revenue.
Next up, C is for copycat. This is the sin of blending in. If your name is too similar to your competitors, you are effectively becoming invisible.
It's honestly worse than being invisible. You might be inadvertently funding your competitors' marketing.
Wait, how so?
Well, if you open a burger joint called In-N-Out Burger Express and you spend money on radio ads, half the people who hear that ad are just going to go to the actual In-N-Out because that's the established neural pathway in their brain.
Oh, man. Or you open yourself up to a brutal trademark lawsuit that will bankrupt you before you even launch. I see this copycat behavior constantly in the tech space, by the way.
Oh, the tech space is notorious for it.
One company gets successful with a specific suffix, like the Bitly trend. Suddenly you have 1,000 startups named Bitly, Grammarly, Optimizely, Calendly. It just becomes the sea of sameness.
You think you are signaling that you are part of an innovative club, but to the consumer, you just look like an unoriginal follower.
Exactly. The R in Scratch is incredibly dangerous because it's a trap that ambitious, successful companies often fall into. It stands for restrictive.
Yes.
This is when you name your business based strictly on the one specific product or service you happen to be offering on day one.
Right. You lock yourself into a box, completely ignoring the reality that businesses must pivot and expand to survive. The most famous cautionary tale here is 1-800-Flowers.
That used to be a great name.
In the 1990s, it was a brilliant, highly functional name. But as the company grew, they realized the margins were way better on gift baskets, gourmet chocolates, teddy bears. But their name was actively working against their expanded business model.
Because it literally says flowers.
Right. Every time a consumer thought, oh, I need to send a sympathy gift basket, they didn't think of 1-800-Flowers because the name literally restricted the consumer's perception of what the company could do. They had to spend fortunes trying to re-educate the public that they sold more than just flowers.
Okay, moving on. A stands for annoying. What pushes a name from being just bad into the realm of truly annoying?
A name crosses into annoying territory when it feels aggressively forced. It causes phonetic friction in the mouth. It's those clunky, mashed-up portmanteaus where two totally unrelated words are jammed together.
Or words where the capitalization is randomly placed in the middle of the word just to look edgy.
Yes. An annoying name makes the reader feel like the brand is demanding attention without having earned it. It's the equivalent of a person who talks too loudly at a party. It frustrates the customer before they've even tried the product.
And on the opposite end of the spectrum from annoying, we have T's for tame.
A tame name is flat. It is purely descriptive, utterly uninspired, and entirely devoid of emotional resonance.
So if you name your business Fast Signs or Quality Accounting Solutions, you are accurately stating what you do, but you are showing zero personality.
You are basically treating your brand identity like a listing in the yellow pages. And in a highly competitive digital marketplace, a tame name is a death sentence because there is nothing for the consumer's memory to grab onto.
You'll just be forgotten.
Completely forgettable. Because you are relying solely on logic, we make signs fast, while your competitors are out there building emotional connections.
That makes total sense. Now, the second C is one of my favorite psychological concepts, the curse of knowledge.
Oh, this one is huge.
This happens when a name makes sense only to industry insiders. It is a massive empathy gap. The founders are so deep into their own technology, their own code, or their own specialized field that they literally forget what it's like to not know their jargon.
They'll use an obscure acronym or a highly technical Latin root word that their engineers think is just brilliant.
But the actual consumer base, the people who actually have the money to buy the product, has absolutely no idea what it means.
And it's intimidating. If I'm looking for software to help run my small bakery and your software is named with a complex algorithmic joke, I assume your software is going to be way too complicated for me to use. You alienate the exact people you were trying to attract because you couldn't step outside your own bubble of expertise.
And finally, the ultimate sin that brings us full circle. The H in CACRTCH is hard to pronounce.
We touched on this with processing fluency. But we have to look at the immense social risk of mispronunciation.
Hmm.
Humans are deeply social creatures, and we are terrified of losing status or sounding foolish in front of our peers.
Oh, absolutely. If I'm at a fancy restaurant and I see a bottle of wine on the menu that looks amazing, but it has this dense, unpronounceable French or Italian name, I'm not going to order it out loud.
Nope.
I might point at it awkwardly, or worse, I'll just order a beer because I don't want the sommelier to correct me and make me feel uncultured.
That is the exact mechanism. Now apply that to your brand. If a customer loves your product, but they aren't entirely sure how to say your brand name, they simply won't talk about it. They won't recommend it to their friends at a dinner party.
Because they don't want to look dumb.
Right. The absolute most valuable marketing channel on earth, organic, peer-to-peer word of mouth, dies instantly. All because you wanted a name with an ambiguous pronunciation. You make your brand socially unapproachable.
So what does this actually mean for everyone listening right now? The practical application is urgent. Before you spend a single dime registering domain names, before you hire a designer to build a logo, before you print business cards or pitch a single investor, you need to run your potential name through this exact smiley and scratch filter.
You have to be brutally, uncomfortably honest with yourself.
Ask the hard questions. Does this name genuinely possess visual imagery, or am I just kidding myself? Is it secretly spelling challenged? Am I suffering from the curse of knowledge?
The true power of Watkins' framework is that it acts as a mirror, protecting you from your own inherent biases. Because when you're the creator, you are too close to the project. This checklist forces you to step into the shoes of the distracted, overloaded, utterly ruthless modern consumer.
It forces you to identify the invisible friction points that you might otherwise gloss over until it is far too late and far too expensive to fix.
Exactly.
And I think this brings us to a perfect synthesis of everything we've explored today. The soul of this introductory chapter, the massive paradigm-shifting takeaway from Watkins' entire approach, is that naming a company, a product, or even a newsletter is fundamentally not an exact science. You cannot rely on algorithms to do the work of human connection.
No, naming is a psychological art form.
It really is.
I think the most accurate way to visualize it is to think of a successful brand name as an emotional bridge connecting your business to your customer.
That is the perfect metaphor to wrap this up. If you try to build that bridge out of industry jargon, strange dropped vowels, inside jokes, and computational linguistics, the bridge collapses under the weight of cognitive friction. The customer looks at the tangled mess and simply refuses to cross it to get to your product. They just walk away.
But if you build that bridge out of familiar, visually evocative concepts, words that make your audience smile, words that borrow existing neurological pathways to make them feel smart, understood, and in on the joke, the friction vanishes.
They will walk right across that bridge without a moment's hesitation.
Yep.
You now have the ultimate blueprint. You have the SMILE framework to ensure your name is sticky, and you have the SCRAT-CH test to ensure you are avoiding the catastrophic trifecta of trouble. You have the tools to be clever without making your customer feel clueless.
You're armed with the exact same methodology that top-tier agencies use to name the products we interact with every single day.
But before you rush off to the whiteboard to start naming your next big project, I want you to do an experiment. Look around at the brands you interact with for the rest of the day. Look at the apps on your phone, the boxes in your pantry, the billboards on your commute. Run them through the SCRAT-CH test.
Let's see how they hold up.
Ask yourself, how many of these companies are secretly committing the 7 deadly sins right now? How much cognitive friction are they causing? And most importantly, how much money is it costing them in lost word of mouth every single day? We will leave you to mull that over. Next time, we dive even deeper into the text to explore the exact anatomy of a name that makes people smile. Have you ever wondered why some brand names just permanently get stuck in your brain while others literally vanish the second you hear them?
Oh, yeah. It happens all the time.
Right. Like, think about it. Why do you instantly remember a wine named Fat Bastard, but you completely forget a tech company named Xobni?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, we are just constantly bombarded with information, with ads, with content everywhere we look.
Exactly. Nonstop.
But despite all that noise, a few very specific words can just immediately trigger our imagination. You know, they build trust and ultimately they open our wallets. And I think the craziest part is that the difference isn't just luck. It's really intentional design.
It is totally designed, and that's exactly what we're getting into today. Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are pulling from a really incredible source excerpts from Alexandra Watkins' book, Hello, My Name is Awesome.
Such a great book.
It really is. We're specifically focusing on her chapter about the 5 qualities of a super sticky name. Because if you're an entrepreneur or maybe launching a startup or even just, branding a new YouTube channel.
Or, honestly, even if you're just curious about the psychology behind why you buy the things you buy.
Exactly. Understanding this mental shortcut is just an absolute game changer. It helps you cut right through the noise.
Right. So we're going to walk you through what's called the SMILE framework. It's an acronym for 5 specific traits that make a name completely unforgettable.
Smile. Okay, I love a good acronym. Let's unpack this. The first major concept, the S in SMILE, stands for suggestive, meaning the name evokes something about your brand, but it doesn't do it in a boring, purely literal way.
Yeah, literal names are actually a massive missed opportunity.
Like if you open a sign-making business and you just name it Fast Signs, that's super literal.
Right. And from a cognitive psychology standpoint, you have to understand how our brains process language. When you use a purely literal name like Fast Signs, you're essentially just handing the consumer raw data.
It's just a fact.
Exactly. Just a fact. And human brains are built to be efficient. So when a brain sees raw, unremarkable data, it literally files it under unimportant and deletes it to save energy. There's zero cognitive engagement there.
It just becomes background noise.
Totally. But on the flip side, when you use a metaphor, you're inviting the consumer's brain to participate. You give them this little micro-discovery.
A micro-discovery. I really like that term.
Yeah, because when the brain takes a split second to connect the dots between your metaphor and your product, and it solves that tiny little puzzle, it actually releases a microscopic hit of dopamine.
Oh, wow. So it literally feels rewarding.
It does. We actually end up liking brands more when they make us feel clever for getting the joke,
That makes so much sense. It's like you want to spark a tiny bit of joy before they've even bought anything. Which, that brings us to Amazon.
Yes, the classic example.
Right, because Jeff Bezos famously almost named the company Book Barn.
Could you imagine?
I really can't. But he chose Amazon because it conjures up images of the world's largest river. It suggests something that's just sweeping and unfathomably large.
And that gave him so much strategic flexibility because think about it. If he stuck with BigBarn.com, he would have put a hard ceiling on his own growth.
Oh, absolutely. You can't sell cloud computing and drone delivery under the name Book Barn.
Exactly. You're explicitly telling the consumer the exact limits of what you do. But Amazon suggested this massive scale from day one. He basically created a name so big, the company had room to grow into it.
That's a brilliant runway. Now, another really cool way to build that suggestive quality is through coined names, specifically portmanteaus.
Well, those are fun when they work.
Right. This is where you gracefully combine 2 distinct words to make something entirely new. We see this everywhere. Groupon, Pictionary, Cinnabon, Pinterest.
Pinterest is actually the perfect example of linguistic elegance.
Oh.
Well, it does 2 jobs at once. It takes pin and interest, right? So it tells you exactly what the platform is for. You're pinning your interests onto a board. But because they share that middle syllable sound, they fuse into this organic-sounding word.
It's just really satisfying to say.
It is. But I will warn you, coining names is incredibly dangerous if you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, because it can just sound like a robot crashing, right?
Literally.
Yeah.
If you just force 2 incompatible words together, it sounds clunky, it creates cognitive friction.
Yeah.
If it doesn't roll off the tongue effortlessly, people will actively avoid saying it out loud.
Right, which is the last thing you want. You can also use these suggestive metaphors to evoke brand personality. Like, look at SUVs. You've got the Ford Explorer, the Expedition, the Range Rover.
None of which are literal.
Exactly. They aren't saying, big metal box on wheels. They're evoking rugged adventure. They're telling you who you'll become if you buy the car.
And this works for B2B companies too, like advertising agencies. You could go the hyper-traditional route and just use the founders' last names, like Foot, Cone, and Belding.
Which honestly sounds like a law firm that's about to sue me.
Right. It implies rigidity. But then you have highly imaginative agencies with names like Victors and Spoils or Wexley School for Girls.
Okay, wait, I have to push back on Victors and Spoils. Wexley School for Girls is funny, I get that. But Victors and Spoils, doesn't that sound incredibly arrogant? Like, to the victor go the spoils.
It definitely has an edge to it.
Yeah, if I'm a client, I don't know if I want to hire a company that sounds like an army coming to pillage my marketing budget. Isn't that alienating?
That's a really valid point,
Yeah.
but it's actually why the name is brilliant. It acts as a filter.
A filter.
Yeah. An agency named Victors and Spoils isn't looking for a cautious conservative bank that wants a boring ad campaign. They are signaling to aggressive brands that want to dominate their industry.
Oh, I see. So the arrogance is basically a feature, not a bug.
Exactly. If a client is put off by the name, they would have hated the agency's edgy pitches anyway. It just saves everyone time.
That is so smart. Okay, but what if your whole value proposition is just being dependable? I see so many service businesses just explicitly put the word trust in their name, like trustworthy plumbing.
Oh, you have to fight that instinct.
Oh.
It almost always backfires.
Really? Why?
Because if we look at human psychology, explicitly demanding trust makes people super suspicious.
Yeah.
Imagine a stranger on the street walking up to you and saying, "I am a very honest person, trust me."
Oh, man. Yeah, my immediate reaction is to check my pockets for my wallet.
Exactly. Trust is demonstrated, it's not declared. When you force the word trust into your name, it feels defensive, like you're compensating for something.
So what should they do instead?
Use strong secondary modifiers. Like there's a robot vacuum company called Neato. Now, Neato on its own is just a fun retro word, right?
Yeah, it sounds like a toy.
But they named the company Neato Robotics. Adding robotics instantly gives it scientific credibility and weight without having to beg for your trust. Words like global, industries, systems, they do that heavy lifting for you.
Okay, so naming your company is a lot like going on a first date.
Oh, like that.
Yeah. You want to drop intriguing hints about your personality. Be a little mysterious, maybe a little playful. But you absolutely do not want to sit down and literally read them your resume, line by line.
That is the perfect analogy. You want that spark of intrigue.
But dropping hints on a first date only works if the other person actually gets the hint, right? If they don't have your frame of reference, it just flies over their head. Which brings us to the M in smile. Meaningful.
And this cannot be overstated. The name has to mean something to your potential customer, not just to you or your co-founders.
Right, because you won't be standing in the grocery aisle to explain the clever backstory to everyone who walks by.
Exactly. If the meaning isn't instantly accessible, the name is failing. Founders fall into this trap all the time because they love their inside jokes.
Totally. I actually love this case study from the book about NorCal Waste Systems. Now, structurally, that name is highly descriptive. You know what they do and where they are.
But words aren't neutral. They have psychological baggage.
Right. And especially in their market, California, Oregon, the word waste conjures up overflowing landfills and pollution. It's the complete opposite of modern green values.
Which is incredibly tragic because NorCal Waste Systems wasn't actually a dirty polluter. They were pioneering recycling and composting initiatives.
Yeah.
But their name was actively undermining their mission.
So every time their trucks drove by, people just saw the giant word waste and thought the worst.
Exactly. The cognitive dissonance was killing their goodwill. So they did a massive rebrand and changed the name to Recology.
Ecology, such a good pivot.
Brilliant. It fuses recycle and ecology. It takes this dirty concept of waste management and elevates to a progressive scientific discipline.
And imagine being an employee. Would you rather wear a uniform that says waste system or one that says Recology? It completely shifts the culture.
It really does. Now, this touches on a huge debate in the branding world, meaning versus length. A lot of founders are obsessed with having the shortest name possible, 3 syllables max.
Right, everyone wants to be quick.
But the research argues that a meaningful long name is vastly superior to a short, meaningless one. People connect with shared values, not keystroke economy.
Like the home furnishing store that named itself previously owned by a gay man.
Yes, it's a mouthful, 6 words, but look at the density of meaning there. It hints at elevated taste, interior design flair, curation.
And it plays on a cultural trope in a really fun, self-aware way.
Exactly, it tells a story. Now imagine if they tried to compress that into a meaningless acronym to keep it short, like POBAGM.
POBAGM.
It sounds like a government agricultural agency or something. It's totally forgettable.
Right. The goal is memorability, not saving the customer a few keystrokes. Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here, though, because the internet is all about speed and convenience, right? Shouldn't my holy grail be a short, unique .com domain, even if I just drop vowels like Flickr or Tumblr or use a made-up word?
That is the most common modern branding trap.
Really? Like, think about the tech company Xobni. Xobni. 5 letters. Unique. That's a massive advantage digitally, isn't it?
No, you're confusing the utility of a URL with the power of a brand. Let's look at Xobni. By the way, do you know what it means?
No idea.
It's the word inbox, spelled backwards.
You are kidding. That is just a cute inside joke for the founders. That is completely useless to me as a consumer.
Exactly. Xobni is what we call an empty vessel name. It has
Correct.
zero inherent meaning. Plus, it creates cognitive friction because no one knows how to pronounce it. Is it Xobni? Xobni?
It honestly just looks like a typo.
Right. And when you choose an empty vessel name, you're essentially buying an empty billboard in the middle of a desert.
So you own the real estate, but literally nobody is driving by.
Exactly. And now you have to spend an absurd amount of money and advertising energy just to build a highway so people can find it. You have to teach them how to say it and then teach them what it means.
That sounds exhausting. What about the vowel dropping trend then?
Places like Flickr or Tumblr only survived because they were early internet pioneers with completely novel utilities and massive funding. If you try that today, you just look like a spam site.
So shorter is definitely not always better, though obviously there's a limit, right? Like there's that law firm mentioned in the book, Zifrin, Britnam, Branca, Fisher, Gilbert Lurie, Stiffelman Cook, Johnson, Landay, and Wolf.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, how do you even answer the phone?
Yeah, meaningful doesn't mean exhaustive. It's about efficiency of meaning, not just making it as short as possible.
Which naturally leads us to the ultimate default mistake people make. When people don't know what to name their business, they just use their own personal name.
The ultimate empty vessel.
Right. It strokes your ego, but your name means absolutely nothing to a stranger on the internet. Like the story about the home stager in Toronto, Tayal Topiwala.
That is such a great example. So she's operating in North America, and for a lot of her potential clients, her name was unfamiliar and maybe intimidating to pronounce.
Which creates that friction again. If someone isn't sure how to say your name, they might actually avoid calling you because they don't want to be embarrassed.
Exactly. The friction actually prevents the transaction. And on top of that, Tayal Piwala Home Staging said nothing about her actual design skills or aesthetic.
So she rebranded to Paprika, right? With the tagline, "Spice up your space."
Yes. Let's look at why that's a massive improvement. Paprika instantly showcases her flair for color. It's a deep, rich red. It hints at energy and vibrancy.
And everyone knows how to say it.
Right. By abandoning her personal name, she stopped trying to fill an empty vessel. People already have positive associations with the word paprika. She just redirects that energy to her business.
And using your own name isn't just an empty vessel. It can actually be a massive business liability. I mean, look at the tragedy of Sherry's Berries.
Oh, that is a devastating cautionary tale.
It really is. Sherry Fitzpatrick spent 2 decades building this incredible reputation for high-quality, hand-dipped chocolate strawberries. Her literal first name became synonymous with premium treats.
She was a phenomenal early success story.
But then, after taking on investors and some bad corporate decisions, she was actually pushed out of her own company. She was fired from Sherry's Berries.
It highlights the existential risk of making your identity the brand.
Totally, because now this massive, faceless corporation owns the trademark to her actual first name. They mass-produce this automated, inferior product with her name on it, and she can't do anything to stop them from diluting the reputation she built.
She essentially lost control of her own identity in the marketplace.
Yeah.
Now she is highly resilient, and she bounced back with a brilliant suggestive name for her new company, Buried in Chocolate.
Oh, that is so good.
Right. But the lesson is stark. Unless your name has some incredible wordplay built in, like the consultant Stephen Lord, who named his business Lord Knows, just leave your name off the door. It serves your ego, but not your customer.
Okay, so a name needs to hint at greatness and carry immediate meaning, but meaning is kind of abstract. How do we make sure a consumer's brain actually holds on to it weeks later? That brings us to the eye and smile, imagery.
This goes incredibly deep into our evolutionary biology. Humans are visually dominant creatures. We process and recall visual information way more efficiently than abstract concepts.
So it's easier to remember a picture than a word.
Exactly. It's called the picture superiority effect. Our brains encode images into the hippocampus with far greater fidelity. When you give the mind a physical image to latch onto, it creates a really sticky neural pathway.
Abstract words slip right through our mental fingers, but concrete images hook in. The author tells this great personal story about backpacking through New Zealand. She met dozens of people, but a decade later, she only remembers 3 specific names: Daisy, Forrest, and Chopper, who happened to be a helicopter pilot.
And why does she remember them?
Yeah.
Because those names instantly paint a high-definition picture in your mind's eye.
Right. You hear daisy, you see a white flower. You hear forest, you see green trees. Chopper, you see spinning helicopter rotors.
The visual anchor makes the memory permanent.
Let's apply this to consumer products. Let's compare two energy drinks. One is named Enviga. What does that look like in your mind's eye?
It paints absolutely nothing. It's an abstract, coined word.
Yeah.
It almost sounds pharmaceutical, right? Like a skin medication.
Exactly. The brain has nothing to hold on to. Now compare that void to an energy drink named Bloom.
The contrast is staggering. You hear bloom, and your brain instantly goes to work. You see a flower opening, you see nature, you see this sudden burst of vitality and energy. The neural connection is effortless.
You see this in the apparel industry too, like Timberland. That's not just a label, it conjures an entire cinematic landscape. Mossy forests, hiking boots, crushing leaves, or even dog food, like Merrick dog food.
Oh, they do this so well. Dog food is traditionally so boring.
Right, usually it's just chicken and rice. Literal and boring. But Merrick names their recipes Thanksgiving Day dinner, cowboy cookout, smothered comfort.
You can practically smell it just reading the label. It makes the purchaser feel like they're curating a culinary experience for their dog, rather than scooping dusty kibble.
But wait, we have to be careful here because there's this huge cognitive illusion that trips people up, the legacy trap. People look at massive heritage brands and say, well, their name doesn't have inherent imagery and they're successful, like Wells Fargo.
Ah, the Wells Fargo illusion.
Yeah. Someone listening is probably yelling, wait, Wells Fargo totally evokes imagery. I picture the Wild West, wooden stagecoaches, the gold rush.
But we have to dissect why you picture that. You only picture stagecoaches because Wells Fargo has spent 162 years and billions of dollars in advertising, relentlessly forcing that association into your brain.
The words Wells and Fargo are literally just the last names of the founders, Henry Wells and William G. Fargo.
Exactly. If two guys named Henry and William launched a brand new fintech startup today and the name Wells Fargo popped up on your phone, it would paint zero pictures. It would sound like a faceless corporate entity.
Right, and you don't have 162 years and $1 billion to train the public. You have to provide your own imagery from day one.
Think of it like this. A bad name is like reading a dense black and white spreadsheet. A great name is like reading a full-color graphic novel.
I love that. When you're naming your brand, be the graphic novel. Close your eyes, say the name out loud. If you don't instantly see a vivid picture, your customers won't either.
And if they can't see it, it's exponentially harder to remember it.
Okay, so once you have that perfect mental painting, you don't want it to just sit there like a static frame on a wall. You want it to walk and expand. You want the name to have legs, the L in smile.
Yes. Having legs means the core name lends itself to a broad theme. It's an organizing principle that can infiltrate every touch point of your business.
It provides endless opportunities for clever wordplay, right? Like marketing campaigns that just write themselves.
Exactly. It creates this cohesive, immersive universe.
The book talks about a PR professional named Lynette Hoy. Originally, she took the default ego route and just called her agency Lynette Hoy PR.
Which is an empty vessel, no meaning, no imagery, zero legs.
But she has this fiercely tenacious, fiery personality, so she rebranded as Fire Talker PR, and instantly you have a theme with massive legs.
And she committed to it fully.
She really did. Her corporate title is no longer CEO. She's the fire chief. She works out of the firehouse. Her service packages aren't gold, silver, and bronze. They are the Inferno, the Controlled Burn, and the Matchbox. Even her ringtone is the song Fire by the Ohio Players.
That level of commitment shows clients that you are deeply creative and thorough. There's a naming firm called Eat My Words that does this with a culinary theme.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah, their blog isn't called Updates, it's the kitchen sink. Their guest Wi-Fi is Candyland. Their premium package is the whole enchilada. They even use a pink retro refrigerator as a bookcase in their office.
That is just incredible attention to detail, and you see this with sub-brands too. Apple built a $1 trillion empire on the lowercase iPad, iMac, iPod, iPhone, iPad, or Trader Joe's International Foods.
Trader Jose's for Mexican cuisine, Trader Ming's for Chinese, Trader Giotto's for Italian. It's playfully adapted, but instantly recognizable as part of the parent brand's universe.
And it works for sequential product updates, too. The tech world loves boring decimals. Version 11.4.2. So sterile.
But remember how Android used to name their updates?
A dessert theme.
Yes. Cupcake, donut, eclair, froyo, jelly bean. It turned a boring software patch into an event. People actually anticipated it. And if your theme is fun enough, it leads to the ultimate victory, monetization. Your customers will literally pay to advertise for you.
Like Hooters selling millions in merchandise just based on their cheeky theme. Or the bakery called the Church of Cupcakes. They sell t-shirts that say, OMG and forgive me, Father, for I have binged.
That is just exceptional copywriting right there.
It is hilarious. Or the frozen yogurt shop Spoon Me selling bumper stickers that say, shut up and spoon me. People buy this stuff because they want to participate in the joke.
You're transforming your customers into a walking billboard army, and they are happily paying you for the privilege. But, and this is a big but, we do need to address a critical boundary here.
Yeah, where's the line between a clever theme and just becoming a cheesy cartoon? Like, if I'm an accountant, I probably shouldn't call myself the number ninja and send my clients tax returns wrapped in plastic throwing stars.
Definitely not. You would destroy your professional credibility.
The strategy relies on lightly peppering the marketing materials with the theme.
Lightly peppering, right? Yes. They should feel like delightful little Easter eggs, not an obnoxious gimmick beating them over the head.
So tonal awareness is key. For an accountant, ninja implies stealth and hiding bad for taxes. But what if the theme was navigation?
That works perfectly. The firm could be True North Financial. The newsletter is the compass. The wealth management package is the horizon. It matches the serious tone required, but still gives you all those thematic benefits.
So pick a category that's highly extendable space, nature, music, food. Your future marketing will write itself. And when someone buys that Spoon Me t-shirt, we have to realize they aren't just buying cotton, they're buying a feeling.
Exactly. Which brings us to the final and undoubtedly most powerful quality of a super sticky name. The E in smile. Emotional.
Emotion moves people. Research shows that up to 50% of every buying decision is driven entirely by emotion.
It's the ultimate cognitive shortcut. Our brains have the logical, spreadsheet reading side and the primal, emotional side. Logic takes heavy lifting, comparing prices, reading reviews.
But emotion just bypasses that firewall completely.
Exactly. When a name makes us laugh or smile or feel nostalgic, our defensive guard drops.
Yeah.
We stop treating it like a math problem, and we just want to experience the feeling.
To see this in action, just walk down the wine aisle.
Oh, the most fiercely competitive retail shelf space on the planet.
Truly. Hundreds of identical bottles, all fermented grape juice. And most of us are not master sommeliers. We don't know the pH balance of the soil. So how do we choose? We shop by the label.
And the names that trigger an instant emotional response completely dominate.
Names like Seven Deadly Sins or Little Black Dress, or my absolute favorite, Educated Guess.
Educated Guess is brilliant.
It's hilarious because it captures the exact emotional state of a normal person trying to pick a $15 bottle of wine for a dinner party. You have no idea if it's good. You're literally just making an educated guess based on the label. You buy it because the brand makes you feel seen.
And this isn't just a soft metric. It translates directly to hard ROI. There's a case study about the Hotel Vitale in San Francisco. They wanted to boost their wedding business.
Right, and their original brochure had super utilitarian names like post-reception bar rental or co-ed bridal shower.
Which sounds like renting municipal equipment. It's just literal data. So they brought in a naming expert. They took the exact same services in the same rooms and just injected emotion.
So post-reception bar rental became last call for alcohol.
Right. And co-ed bridal shower became shower together. They even changed their group discount rate to the entourage rate.
That is so smart because planning a wedding is insanely stressful. By injecting humor and levity into the pricing brochure, they functioned as a pressure release valve. They made the hotel feel like a party before the contract was even signed.
And the financial results were staggering. Just by changing those words, they saw a 25% jump in their wedding business. 25%. Just for changing a few syllables.
Wow, you see this everywhere. Even a diner changing chicken soup to grandma's chicken soup. Adding the word grandma implies warmth and care that generic soup just lacks.
The dating industry uses this too. eHarmony realized they were missing a younger, slightly more casual demographic. People who wanted a real relationship, but weren't ready to march straight to the altar.
Right, because the eHarmony brand feels very heavy. It implies algorithms and deep long-term marriage commitment.
Exactly. So for this news site, they needed a name that captured the thrill of early romance, that electric rush before a great first date. They explored that emotional landscape and landed on the perfect name, Jazz.
Oh, like I'm jazzed to meet you.
Yes, it's literally an emotion. It captures the upbeat tempo of a new crush, and subtly, as a nod to eHarmony, it evokes music. A total masterclass in emotional naming.
It really is. Emotion makes the consumer move toward you before their logical brain even realizes why. Okay, let's pull all of this together. We've deconstructed the SMILE framework.
Yes, so to summarize, suggestive, hinting at essence through metaphor, meaningful, carrying weight with the audience, imagery, painting a vivid mental picture, legs, a theme that expands, and emotional, forging an instant connection.
The core message here is that a brand name's job is to create an effortless, joyful connection, as the author says. A name should make you smile, not scratch your head in confusion.
And the best part is, this democratizes branding. You don't need a PhD in linguistics or a billion-dollar ad budget. You just need to understand human nature and be clear and creative.
You're designing a psychological shortcut directly to the consumer's heart. Now that you're armed with the blueprint of a super sticky name, you're probably wondering about the dark side.
Oh, the catastrophic deal breaker.
Exactly. Next time, we're diving deep into the 7 deadly sins of naming, the literal head scratchers that can financially ruin a business before it even launches.
We'll be covering the dangers of spelling challenges, the copycat trap, and the curse of knowledge.
It's going to be a fascinating breakdown, but before we wrap today, I want to leave you with one final thought. We started by exploring why fat bastard wine sticks in your head while Rebney fades away. Later today, take a hard look at the apps on your phone or open your pantry. Put those brands through the SMILE test. Are the biggest brands in your life actually using brilliant, suggestive names? Or are they succeeding despite their terrible, empty vessel names, simply because they have massive advertising budgets forcing you to remember them? Think about it.
What if the name that you proudly chose for your business, like the one you spent weeks brainstorming, the one you painstakingly pitched to investors, and the one you paid a design agency to plaster across 100 coffee mugs, what if that name is the exact reason your business is failing?
I mean, it's a completely terrifying proposition, right?
Yeah.
You just assume your product is the problem or maybe your marketing strategy is off, when in reality, the friction is embedded right there in the very first word your customer actually reads.
Yeah, exactly, because there is this massive, I'd even call it a pervasive misconception out there in the whole startup ecosystem.
For sure.
People genuinely believe that if a name is unique, that automatically translates to being creative or a great name. But in the cutthroat business world, unique can often just mean confusing or frustrating or honestly just downright bizarre.
It really can.
We have all experienced this, right? You're walking down the street or you're scrolling through an app store and you see a completely incomprehensible brand name. And you just whisper to yourself like, what were they smoking?
Exactly. I mean, being different just for the sake of being different is easily one of the most common traps in entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
So today, we are going to dive into the 7 deadly sins of brand naming. This is a concept developed by naming expert Alexandra Watkins, and it is basically a definitive, uncompromising checklist of what to avoid when you're branding a product, a company, or even just a personal project.
Which is so valuable for anyone listening, honestly.
It really is.
Yeah.
Whether you are a founder who is about to launch a startup, or you're just someone fascinated by the hidden psychology of, why certain businesses become household names while others just silently fade away.
Right.
Understanding these 7 deal breakers, it acts as a shortcut. It is literally how you build a brand that actually sticks in the human brain.
I just love how this framework is structured because it's entirely built around what not to do. And it's organized into this really brilliant acronym, which is SCRATCH, SCRATCH.
Yes, the Scratchy framework.
If a name suffers from even one of these 7 sins, you just need to scratch it off your list immediately. Like, do not spend $10,000 on a domain name. Just scratch it.
Absolutely. No exceptions.
But to really understand this, I feel like we shouldn't just read down a list. We need to look at this through the lens of a panicked founder who is trying to get a business off the ground. Because these sins, they usually happen in a very specific psychological sequence.
I think that is the perfect way to frame it, actually, because the naming journey, it almost always begins with this huge burst of optimism, which is then followed rapidly by sheer panic.
Oh, right. You have the grand idea.
Yeah.
You go to a domain registrar online, you type in your brilliant standard English word, and it's taken. Or it's for sale for like $85,000.
Which is just a gut punch.
Total gut punch.
Yeah.
So the panic sets in. You start thinking, okay, well, I can't afford the actual word. I'll just change a letter. I'll get creative. And boom, you've just walked straight into the very first sin.
Yep.
The S in SCRTCH, spelling challenged.
The spelling challenge name. This occurs when a name looks like a typo, or it deliberately isn't spelled the way it phonetically sounds.
Right.
The fundamental truth here is that creative spelling isn't clever. It is just lazy. If a name isn't spelled like it sounds, the brand is essentially doomed to spend its entire life cycle apologizing for it.
Yeah, the friction begins before the customer has even made a purchase.
Yeah.
But I actually want to push back on this right away because I hear this from entrepreneurs constantly.
Okay, let's hear it.
Let's say I'm bootstrapping.
Right.
I have a tiny budget. The premium.com for my ideal name is sitting untouched in some domain hoarder's portfolio for 50 grand.
Right. Very common scenario.
But the misspelled version, say I'm dropping a vowel or swapping a C for a K, that domain is $9 a year. So as a founder,
Yeah.
isn't it objectively smarter to save the $50,000, creatively misspell the name, and use that capital for actual product development?
See, it is a totally understandable instinct, but it is a false economy. Yeah. You are calculating the upfront cost, but you are completely ignoring the lifetime customer acquisition cost, the SCAT penalty of a bad name.
Oh, wow. Okay, break that down.
Let's look at the mechanics of why. Every single time you have to spell your name out loud, like on a podcast or in a sales meeting or at a networking event, you are introducing doubt.
Ah, I see.
You have to say it's spelled like connect, but with a K and two X's.
Right, right.
The listener instantly registers that you couldn't afford the real word. It subconsciously devalues your brand equity before you have even made your pitch.
It's the equivalent of showing up to a venture capital pitch in a suit that is 3 sizes too big. I mean, you might have saved money at the thrift store, but the impression you were giving is that you aren't playing the major leagues.
Precisely. That's a great way to put it. And there is an even more punishing mechanical reality today, which is algorithmic SEO penalties and voice search.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
The sources talk about this.
We can call it the Siri theory. A decade ago, a misspelled name was an annoyance. Today, with the absolute dominance of natural language processing, so think Siri, Alexa, or dictation software, it is a massive financial liability.
Oh, this is so fascinating to me because NLP algorithms are trained on standard phonetic probability models, right? They're literal by design.
Exactly. They don't understand your clever pun. If your customer uses their phone's microphone to search for your brand, or they dictate a text to a friend about your product, the algorithm is going to map their speech to the most statistically probable English word.
So it just fixes it.
Yes. If your brand is intentionally misspelled, the software will literally autocorrect it right back to the proper spelling.
Wow.
You are essentially forcing your customer to wage a war against their own technology just to find you.
That sounds exhausting for the consumer.
It is. And worse, if they search the corrected spelling, Google is highly likely to serve them ads for your competitors. So you are literally subsidizing your rival's marketing.
You are paying a hidden tax on every single interaction. That is brutal. And speaking of paying a tax, I mean, we have to talk about the absolute most legendary failure in this category from the sources.
Oh, I know exactly which one you mean.
Back in 2010, the Head Scratcher of the Year award went to this organic baby clothing company called Species.
Just incredible.
I want you to picture the word species. That's spelled S-P-E-E-S-E-E-S.
It is a masterclass in self-sabotage, honestly.
And the rationale they provided is what makes it so incredibly funny. When people inevitably ask why on earth it was spelled like that, their official defense was, well, that's the way a baby might spell species, if a baby could spell.
Which completely ignores the fundamental fact that babies do not have credit cards.
Exactly.
Babies are not the target demographic. Exhausted parents are the demographic.
Imagine being the lead sales rep for that company. Like you are grinding out B2B calls all day, trying to get retail boutiques to carry your line. You have to give your email address over the phone.
It would be a nightmare.
You'd be saying, yes, that's info@species.com. No, not the actual word species. S-P-E-E-S-E-E-S. Yes, I know it looks insane, but we think a baby might spell it that way. I mean, you would quit by Tuesday.
You really would. And beyond the sheer operational exhaustion of it, Alexandra Watkins points out a very specific, undeniable naming rule that this company violated.
Oh, yes.
Never, under any circumstances, let your business name rhyme with feces.
It just feels like something that shouldn't need to be explicitly stated in a business textbook, you know? Yet here we are.
Common sense is not always common practice.
Right. But this spelling challenge, SIN, it isn't just about mangling vowels. It's also about embedding numbers into words, right?
Yes, absolutely. You see this heavily in strip malls and local retail. Stores name friends to be made with the number 2 or engraver memory with the letter U.
It works for a vanity license plate in 1998, maybe. But for a modern brand, it is deeply unprofessional.
It really is.
You are forcing the customer to remember a mathematical equation. They're sitting there thinking, wait, was it the number 4 or FOUR? The cognitive load is just way too high.
Exactly. So the ultimate practical takeaway for this first sin is completely ironclad. If you have to spell it out loud, or if a voice-to-text algorithm garbles it, scratch it off the list immediately.
Okay, so that brings us to the next phase of our hypothetical founder's journey.
Right.
You've realized you can't creatively misspell your way into a cheap domain. You recognize that you need to look professional and established and authoritative.
Yeah.
So the natural pivot for a panicked mind is to look at the market leaders and say, well, what's working for them? Let's just do that.
Enter the counterfeit mindset, which leads us perfectly to the second sin. The C in TCH. Copycat. The copycat name. Right. This is when a founder adopts a name, a suffix, or a stylistic trend that is suspiciously similar to a dominant competitor in their space.
You know what bothers me most about this specific naming trap? It is the profound lack of self-awareness. It's like walking into a high-stakes negotiation wearing a fake luxury watch.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Right. Because from 50 feet away, someone might glance at your wrist and think, oh, nice Rolex. You get a momentary borrowed authority.
Right, but it's fragile.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Because the second they look closely, the illusion completely shatters. They see the sweeping hand ticking incorrectly. They see the cheap metal. And suddenly, you don't just look like someone who can't afford a Rolex. You look like someone who is actively trying to deceive them.
Yes.
It destroys your credibility entirely.
That analogy hits the nail on the head because it highlights the psychological mechanism at play here, which is trust.
Trust, yeah.
A brand is fundamentally a promise of consistent quality. When you hijack another company's naming architecture, you are signaling to the consumer that you lack the core competency to build your own identity.
Basically saying, we aren't creative enough to come up with our own name.
Exactly. If you are cutting corners on your name, the consumer subconsciously assumes you are cutting corners on your product.
And the market history is just littered with these examples. Look at the frozen yogurt boom a while back.
Oh, a classic example.
Pinkberry launches, they build this incredible, sleek, highly recognizable brand. They do all the hard work of educating the market on tart frozen yogurt, and instantly, they are just swarmed by parasites.
The market was absolutely flooded. You had Uberry, Kiwiberry, Peachberry, Lemonberry, Blissberry.
It is exhausting for the consumer, and it happens in tech just as aggressively, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. When Twitter exploded and proved that microblogging was a viable concept, suddenly every enterprise collaboration tool adopted the exact same phonetic structure.
Right. Yammer, jabber, chatter.
They just cloned the rhythm of the word. They wanted that association.
But the danger of the copycat sin goes far beyond just looking unoriginal, right? There are severe legal ramifications.
Huge legal risks. When you mimic a competitor's name, you are actively inviting trademark infringement lawsuits and cease and desist letters.
You're putting a target on your back.
Completely. Large corporations have dedicated legal teams whose sole purpose is to aggressively protect their brand equity. They will bleed a startup dry in litigation just to make an example of them.
Wow. And even if you manage to avoid a lawsuit, you still fall victim to overarching cliches.
Yes, the trend followers.
It's not just ripping off specific competitors, it's ripping off tired trends, like throwing an I in front of a noun. Unless Steve Jobs is literally signing your paychecks, do not put an I in front of your product. It screams 2005.
Or the E prefix, you know. Prefix. It's just hopelessly dated. Then you have the trend of mashing a random color with a noun, like white hat security.
Right. What does that even mean to a layman?
Unless the color has a highly specific, deeply meaningful connection to your audience, like white hats representing ethical hackers and cybersecurity, it sounds like a random word generator built your company.
Boyd, I want to clarify something here, because trademark law is actually incredibly nuanced. I was looking into this, and there is a glaring exception to the copycat rule.
Okay, yes, let's talk about the exception.
It is actually perfectly legal, and sometimes completely fine, to have the exact same name as another massive brand if and only if the industries are completely separated by an impenetrable wall.
Yes, this is a crucial distinction in intellectual property law. Trademark protection is designed specifically to prevent consumer confusion within a specific market class.
Consumer confusion.
Exactly. If there is no reasonable way a consumer could confuse the two products, they can share the name.
The ultimate example of this is Dove. You have Dove soap and you have Dove chocolate.
Yeah.
Two globally recognized, multi-billion-dollar brands living in perfect harmony.
Because the context is entirely different.
Right. No one is standing in the shower washing their face, thinking they are rubbing a chocolate bar on themselves.
No, I mean, the neural pathways associated with personal hygiene and indulgent snacks do not overlap in the consumer's mind, so there's no confusion.
Same with Monster. Monster's a massive job board, it's a wildly popular energy drink, and it's an audio cable manufacturer. Or Delta, an airline, and a company that makes kitchen faucets.
But for the entrepreneur listening right now, the practical takeaway remains unchanged. Do not assume you can navigate those legal gray areas safely.
Yeah, that's a dangerous game.
It is. Build your own identity to build trust. Riding on a competitor's coattails is a massive signal of weakness to both your customers and your potential investors.
Okay, so let's check back in on our hypothetical founder. They've realized they can't misspell the name, and they've realized they can't just clone a competitor.
Right, those avenues are closed.
So the pendulum swings wildly in the opposite direction. They say, fine, I won't copy anyone. I will be so incredibly literal, so hyper-specific about exactly what I do that no one can possibly misunderstand my brand.
And they walk right into the third trap.
Exactly. The R in Scratch, restrictive.
The restrictive name. This is the danger of locking your brand into a tiny claustrophobic box by naming it after your very first specific product or your initial geographic location.
I mean, it makes total sense in month one. You sell coats in Burlington, so you call it Burlington Coat Factory. It's logical.
It is logical in the short term. But the fundamental law of business, especially in the modern era, is extreme volatility.
Right. Things change fast.
Precisely. You cannot predict the strategic trajectory of your company. You do not know what you will be selling or where you will be operating in 5, 10, or 20 years.
This is true.
Therefore, your brand name needs to function as a wide umbrella, not a straitjacket. A restrictive name acts as a drag coefficient on your future growth.
The quintessential example of this from the sources is Canadian Tire. Now, if you are a listener in Canada, Canadian Tire is an absolute institution. It's a huge part of the cultural fabric.
Oh, definitely.
But if you are anywhere else in the world, you hear that name and your brain immediately categorizes it. You think, okay, they sell automotive tires in Canada. Got it.
Except they're a massive, sprawling retail giant. They sell toasters, trampolines, tropical plants, tents, power tools, children's toys.
They sell everything.
Everything.
But their name explicitly tells the consumer they only sell one thing. Now, it works in Canada because they have the luxury of a 100-year history. They have spent decades and likely hundreds of millions of advertising dollars building enough brand equity to overcome the friction of their own name.
But think about the sheer inefficiency of that. In the 1980s, their actual literal tagline had to be, "There is a lot more to Canadian Tire than tires."
That is so painful. When your tagline is forced to apologize for or correct your brand name, you have failed at naming.
You really have. And imagine the strategic nightmare if Canadian Tire ever decided to expand into the United States market.
Oh, man.
They would have to launch a multi-million-dollar educational ad campaign just to convince Americans that they can buy a coffee maker there, not just hubcaps. The sunk cost is astronomical.
We saw the exact same thing happen with Burlington Coat Factory, too. As they expanded into home furnishings and general apparel, they literally had to spend marketing dollars to say, we're more than just coats.
It's a huge waste of resources.
Or diapers.com, which eventually wanted to be the Amazon of all baby products.
Yeah.
But they had painted themselves into a diaper-shaped corner.
It is incredibly prevalent in the tech hardware space, too.
Right.
Take iRobot as a really fascinating case study.
Okay, let's look at iRobot.
They launched their flagship product, the robotic vacuum, and they named it the Roomba. Now, that is an absolutely brilliant product name.
Roomba is fantastic.
It has a great phonetic rhythm, it implies movement, it's memorable.
Clearly.
But then they launched their second product, a robotic wet vac that washes hard floors. And they named it the Scuba.
Wait, really? Scuba?
Yes, which is where the strategic error occurred. By tying the naming convention to the "bay" suffix, they trapped themselves. They essentially ran out of viable words that fit that extremely narrow phonetic constraint.
Ah, I see.
So when they released subsequent highly innovative robots like The Vero for cleaning pools or the Luge for cleaning gutters, those names felt entirely orphaned.
They lost the umbrella effect entirely. Vero sounds like a prescription allergy medication, not part of the Roomba family.
Exactly. They sacrificed brand cohesion because their initial naming strategy was too restrictive.
So the practical takeaway here is vital for any founder listening. Never name your company exactly the same thing as your first product.
Never.
Your first product is just your entry point into the market. You must build a brand name with enough semantic elasticity to cover future expansion.
Perfect way to summarize it.
Okay, so our founder is really sweating now. They need an umbrella name. They need something wide, elastic, unique, properly spelled, and legally defensible.
It's a tall order.
It is. And this is the moment where logic usually breaks down entirely.
Right.
The founder retreats to a whiteboard, grabs a marker, and decides to play Dr. Frankenstein.
Oh, no.
They start violently mashing different words together to invent something entirely new, and they commit the fourth sin, the A in chromatisch. Annoying.
An annoying name is one that feels overtly forced, visually clunky, or just actively frustrates the customer. Now, while annoying might sound like a highly subjective metric, linguistically, it is very real. There is a visceral, cognitive rejection that happens when a name is just trying too hard.
Oh, we all have a sixth sense for this. It's like the linguistic uncanny valley.
Yes.
The brain recognizes the constituent parts of the word, but the way they are assembled feels deeply unnatural. My favorite concept in this section from the text is what is referred to as the grammar slammer.
The grammar slammer. A grammatically challenged name isn't just quirky, it signals a lack of sophistication. It feels inherently unprofessional.
Take Toys R Us. We all have an immense childhood nostalgia for it. We associate it with joy. But if you strip away the nostalgia and look at it objectively,
It is a mess.
it is a grammatical nightmare. It violates 3 fundamental rules of the English language in just 7 letters. The backwards R, the improper capitalization, the lack of punctuation. It is chaos.
It survived because of an aggressive monopoly on a specific retail category during a specific era, not because it was a good name.
Exactly. And then you have the legendary, universally acknowledged head-scratcher, Ruth's Chris Steakhouse.
Ruth's Chris Steakhouse.
It is physically uncomfortable to say out loud. Try it. Wow. The transition from the dreth sound in Ruth's to the hard Jack sound in Chris requires an awkward pause.
It sounds like a stumble. It sounds like you forgot the name halfway through saying it.
That phonetic friction is exactly what makes it annoying.
Oh.
But it's not just grammar, right? It is the forced suffixes.
Oh, definitely. We see this constantly when founders try to make a generic word sound proprietary, adding Nepturmania or M2topia to everything.
Right, like Burgertopia.
Exactly. There is an example in the sources of a women's professional networking organization that decided to call themselves Femfessionals.
Oh, that is just a brutal portmanteau. Femfessionals.
Mashing 2 distinct words together like that rarely works because the syllables clash. It doesn't roll off the tongue. It sounds like a bureaucratic committee forced it into existence through sheer willpower.
It really lacks elegance. You see this heavily with the abuse of the word nirvana, too.
Yes. Nirvana is a beautiful, evocative word on its own. But when brands try to hijack its positive associations by appending it to their product like Tavana, Homavana, Sleepavana, it just feels uncomfortably contrived.
It is brand engineering at its most transparent.
And if we are talking about annoying, we have to talk about initials.
No initials. So many founders default to their initials. The sources recount this incredibly telling story of 2 founders, Nancy and Colleen.
Right, I remember this one.
They created a highly functional, reusable labeling system for organizing things, and they named the company NACKit.
Let's visualize how that was spelled for the listeners. Capital N, capital A, capital C, capital K, lowercase I, lowercase t, exclamation point.
NACKit. It looks like a typo generated by a cat walking across a keyboard. And where did it come from? It came from Nancy and Colleen's first initials, NA and CK.
Which highlights the core problem with this approach. Those initials were deeply, profoundly meaningful to Nancy and Colleen, and they meant absolutely nothing to the rest of the human race.
Nothing at all.
You cannot expect the consumer to care about your internal founder's mythology.
It is pure ego. And the irony is, not only was NCKit visually and phonetically annoying, but they actually got hit with a trademark infringement claim from 3M.
The massive conglomerate that makes Post-it notes.
Exactly. And honestly, it was a blessing in disguise. It forced them to abandon their ego-driven acronym and rebrand.
And they came up with something spectacular, didn't they?
They did. Stash Mob.
Stash Mob. That is infinitely better.
It's fun. It hints perfectly at the utility of the product, organizing your chaotic stash of stuff, and it's incredibly easy to spell and say.
The contrast between NCKit and Stash Mob perfectly illustrates the practical takeaway for this sin. If a name feels forced, if it is grammatically bizarre, or if it relies on a punctuation mark like an exclamation point just to generate fake excitement, it's going to exhaust your customers.
True brand excitement comes from the product, not from aggressive punctuation.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's check back in on our deeply traumatized founder.
They've been through a lot.
They really have. They've tried being creative, they've tried being literal, they've tried inventing a new word, and every single path has led to disaster. So what happens next?
Total capitulation.
Total capitulation. They throw their hands up in defeat, decide to play it entirely aggressively safe, and they walk right into the fifth sin. The T in TCH, tame.
The tame name. This is a name that is completely flat, purely descriptive, and entirely uninspired. It is basically the wallflower of brand identities.
And the economic reality of a tame name is brutal. Because if your name is purely descriptive, you blend instantly into what marketers call the sea of sameness.
Exactly. A tame name demands a massive, often unsustainable advertising budget just to buy the personality that the name itself lacks.
Right.
If your name doesn't do any of the heavy lifting, your marketing dollars have to do all of it. Because descriptive words draw from a very limited pool of industry standard vocabulary, your name becomes completely indistinguishable from your competitors.
The ultimate, most painful example of this right now is the B2B tech sector, specifically what is known as the cloud crowd.
Oh, the cloud crowd. Over the last decade, as enterprise computing shifted off-premise, every single company wanted to signal that they were part of this new paradigm. So they all used the exact same word.
The list is mind-numbing. Cloud 2B, Cloud Net, Cloud 9, Cloud Bus, Cloud Pad, Cloud Shield, Cloud Flare. It is utter saturation.
They took a word that used to be evocative and turned it into white noise.
There is a highly revealing anecdote about municipal branding related to this in the material. The city of San Francisco, trying to capitalize on the tech boom in a specific downtown neighborhood, attempted to officially rebrand the district as the Cloud Corridor.
Cloud Corridor. It sounds like the hallway outside the HR department at an accounting firm.
It is so sanitized, so painfully corporate, and the locals, the actual humans living and working there, completely and utterly rejected it.
Of course they did.
You know what the organic, ground-up name for that neighborhood became? Twittertown.
Notice the difference in cognitive processing there? Cloud Corridor requires System 2 thinking. It's analytical, it's dry, and it's descriptive. Twittertown hits System 1. It's intuitive, evocative, and instantly paints a picture of the culture, the people, and the energy of the area. It has personality.
But to be fair to the tamer names out there, I want to inject some nuance.
Okay, let's hear it.
There are specific scenarios where being incredibly tame and descriptive isn't just acceptable, it's actually the superior strategy.
Yes, the exception to the rule. Tame names are highly effective and honestly necessary when a customer is making a rapid, strictly utilitarian choice between service tiers.
Like FedEx.
The classic example is FedEx, yes.
When I am standing in a FedEx office, panicked because I need a document in New York by tomorrow morning, I am not looking for a creative brand experience. I'm looking for utility.
Right. You don't want ambiguity there.
Exactly. I have the choice between FedEx Priority Overnight and FedEx Ground. You do not want FedEx Priority Overnight to be creatively branded as the Lightning Bird delivery protocol.
No, absolutely not.
If I see Lightning Bird, I have to stop and think, wait, does that mean it flies today? Does it mean it's fast but goes by truck? What am I actually buying?
In that moment, friction is the enemy of the transaction. You need the name to be as tame and literal as possible.
But that is for a subservice tier beneath a strong parent brand, right?
Exactly. FedEx is the strong, memorable parent brand. Priority Overnight is just the descriptive utility. For your overarching brand identity, the practical takeaway is clear. Unless you are offering purely utilitarian service tiers, do not let a lack of imagination turn your company into a wallflower.
Stand out. Give the brain something to latch onto. But, ironically, sometimes a founder does exactly that. They create a name that isn't tame at all. It is incredibly deep, richly layered, intensely metaphorical, and profoundly meaningful. But only to the one single person who invented it.
Which brings us to the sixth sin.
Yes, the C in Scratch. The curse of knowledge.
The curse of knowledge. This is a phenomenon that occurs when a name makes absolute sense to industry insiders but is completely impenetrable to the general public.
I really want to spend some time unpacking the psychology of this because it is one of the most fascinating cognitive biases humans possess. The curse of knowledge isn't just a metaphor. It is a documented psychological reality.
It is. It's the cognitive bias where highly informed, expert individuals literally lose the ability to remember what it is like to not know something.
That is wild.
From a neurological perspective, as you become an expert in a field, your brain undergoes synaptic pruning. It builds highly efficient neural pathways for industry jargon, acronyms, and shorthand.
Right. To you, these concepts become as fundamental as breathing.
Exactly. You just assume everyone shares this baseline context.
It's like cryptographic hashing. Think of the founder as holding the private key. They have all the context, the history, the technical specs. They use that private key to encrypt their brand name into something highly compressed and technical.
I love this analogy.
Right. But then they hand that encrypted name to the public, who only has the public key. The public can see the box, but they can't unlock the meaning. The founder is standing there saying, "Isn't it beautiful?" And the customer is just staring at a locked, incomprehensible box.
That is a phenomenal analogy. The founder is handing out a cipher without providing the decoder ring. We see this vividly in the pharmaceutical and medical spaces.
Oh, yes. Take the pain relief patch, Salonpas.
This one is so telling.
This blew my mind. I grew up seeing Salonpas commercials on television. And for decades, I genuinely thought Salonpas was this delicate combination of two French words. Like you go to a relaxing salon and the pain just it passes away. I thought it was elegant.
The reality is violently unelegant. It is deeply clinical. The name is a clunky, literal combination of its biochemical mechanism.
Okay, tell them what it means.
It stands for salicylate plus pass. Why? Because the active medicinal ingredient is methyl salicylate, and the patch allows it to pass through the dermal layer of the skin.
Salicylate plus pass equals Salonpas. Who on earth, outside of a pharmacology lab or a medical university, is ever going to make that neurological connection?
Nobody.
The brand spent millions of dollars advertising a name that actively alienated the consumer's understanding of how the product actually worked.
It is the purest distillation of the curse of knowledge. The engineers and chemists named it for themselves, not for the person in the pharmacy aisle with a sore back.
Wow.
We see this constantly in consumer electronics, too. It manifests as what is referred to as alphanumeric soup.
Oh, this is a plague. You walk into a Best Buy, you want to buy a nice set of computer speakers, and you are staring at a box labeled the Altec Lansing M202 sitting right next to the HX8020.
Now, to an Altec Lansing audio engineer or a supply chain manager, those alphanumeric strings are deeply meaningful. HX might denote the high-frequency crossover, 80 might be the wattage, and 20 might be the manufacturing year.
Sure.
To the insider, it is a perfect description of the product. But to a 19-year-old college student trying to buy speakers for their dorm room, it means absolutely nothing.
It generates zero emotional resonance. It's like naming a golden retriever puppy, Canine Biological Unit Sector 4. You cannot bond with an alphanumeric string.
Exactly. Thankfully, Altec Lansing eventually recognized they were suffering from the curse of knowledge, and they executed a highly successful pivot.
What did they do?
They realized consumers buy consumer electronics based on the experience they deliver, not the internal circuitry. So they rebranded the M202 to the Moondance, and the HX8020 became the Expressionist.
Instantly, the lockbox opens. Moondance gives you a vibe. You can visualize it on a nightstand playing smooth jazz. Expressionist sounds powerful and artistic. You moved from a serial number to an identity.
The curse of knowledge also heavily impacts founders who try to use foreign languages or highly localized slang.
Oh, yeah.
Using obscure foreign words like umpqua or yukonuba might hold deep personal meaning for the founder based on their heritage or a profound travel experience. But to a broader mass market audience, it just looks like a random assembly of vowels. It creates distance rather than connection.
And the danger of slang is even more acute, especially in the internet age. If you are a 45-year-old founder targeting a Gen Z demographic, you are almost certainly operating under a severe curse of knowledge regarding youth culture.
Definitely. There is a terrifying story about a client who wanted to name their new beverage brand Pearl Diver.
Okay, on the surface, to an older executive, Pearl Diver sounds elegant, adventurous, premium.
Right, you picture tropical waters searching for hidden treasure. It sounds great.
Until you take the mandatory step of checking that phrase against the Urban Dictionary.
Which is a crucial step.
Which reveals that Pearl Diver is actually a highly obscure, incredibly explicit, and deeply inappropriate slang term. The name had to be killed immediately.
A total disaster narrowly averted by a simple search. But this raises a profound question. If a founder is so deeply entrenched in their own world, if the synaptic pruning has already happened and they are suffering from the curse of knowledge, how can they successfully step back and view their creation with beginner's eyes?
Yeah, how do you bypass your own brain's blind spots?
You cannot do it alone. It requires external, unvarnished validation. And critically, you cannot ask your peers, your investors, or your industry friends because they share your curse of knowledge.
They have the same blind spots.
Exactly. You have to ask people completely outside your demographic and industry. You hand them the name on a piece of paper without a single word of preamble or explanation. If they furrow their brow, if they misinterpret the industry entirely, or if they struggle to read it, you have your answer.
Because in the real world, you will not be standing next to every single customer to explain what your clever acronym means.
Precisely. The practical takeaway is undeniable. Your customer should never need a cryptographic private key, a pharmacology degree, or an urban dictionary translator just to understand what your brand does.
Which brings us finally to the seventh and ultimate sin. The absolute apex of the curse of knowledge is knowing exactly, flawlessly how to pronounce a word you invented while it leaves every single person who encounters it totally tongue-tied.
Yes.
The H in Scrabble, PCH, I'll pronounce.
Hard to pronounce. If your name is not instantly phonetically obvious, or if it feels unapproachable, your brand is effectively dead in the water.
This is rooted in basic human psychology, isn't it?
It is. If people do not know how to pronounce a name with 100% confidence, they simply will not say it out loud. Human beings are evolutionarily wired to avoid public embarrassment and loss of social status.
This is so fundamentally true, and it dictates consumer behavior in ways we don't even realize.
Let's look at the classic menu analogy from the reading. We have all lived this scenario. Imagine you are at a high-end, authentic French bistro. You are on a date or maybe a business dinner with a client you are trying to impress.
The stakes are high.
The main course arrives, and you confidently, flawlessly order the salade niçoise.
You feel sophisticated. You have signaled your cultural competence to the table.
Exactly. You are riding high, but then the waiter clears the plates and hands you the dessert menu. And you are staring at a pastry called a millefeuille. Mille-Feuille, or a cherry clafoutis.
Your brain completely freezes. The linguistic confidence you had 5 minutes ago just evaporates. You realize that if you attempt to say millefeuille, you have a 90% chance of butchering the vowels and sounding like an uncultured idiot in front of your client.
The phonetic friction creates acute social anxiety. So what is the behavioral outcome of that anxiety?
You completely alter your purchasing decision. You close the menu, hand it back to the waiter, and say, you know what, I'm actually quite full. I'll just have a black decaf coffee.
Wow.
You'd literally skip the product entirely, not because you didn't want the pastry, but specifically to avoid the psychological pain of mispronouncing it.
That is the precise mechanism of failure. When a brand name is hard to pronounce, it creates instant paralyzing friction. And in the business ecosystem, that friction destroys your word-of-mouth marketing.
Which is everything.
It is the most valuable, highest converting marketing channel in existence. If I love your software, but I can't confidently pronounce the name of your company, I am not going to recommend it to my boss in a board meeting. I will stay silent to protect my own reputation. Your viral coefficient drops to absolute zero.
It is the silent killer of startups.
Yeah.
There's an incredible story that perfectly illustrates this. A local catering company decided to name themselves Chews, spelled C-H-E-W-E-S.
A classic pronunciation trap built on creative spelling. Looking at it, is it pronounced chews, like chewing food? Or is it chewies?
Nobody knows. The founder knows, but the public is guessing. And the consequences in the digital age are hilarious and tragic. When a potential customer used Siri to verbally search for Chews Catering near me, Siri's natural language processor got so confused by the phonetic ambiguity that it bypassed food entirely and returned a GPS list of 15 nearby shoe stores.
That is a complete systemic failure of brand communication, from the human mouth right down to the digital algorithm.
Total failure.
And this hard-to-pronounce sin also encompasses a highly specific, very common typographic error. We can call it capital punishment.
Capital punishment? That is a brilliant term for it.
It refers to the disastrous decision to use all CAPS for your brand name logo or standard text formatting. The reason this fails is rooted in how the human eye processes typography. We do not read by looking at individual letters. We read by recognizing the holistic shape of a word.
The ascenders and descenders.
Yes, known as boomas. When a word is in all caps, it becomes a solid rectangular block. It loses its visual shape.
And when the brain sees a solid block of capital letters, it automatically defaults to a specific assumption. It assumes it is an acronym. It forces the reader to emphasize the wrong syllables or sound out individual letters.
A perfect example is the wildly popular nail polish brand, OPI. Because it is formatted as OPI, people constantly mispronounce it as Opie like the little boy from the classic Andy Griffith television show. It completely undermines the sophisticated, high-fashion branding they are aiming for.
Or look at the massive enterprise software giant, SAP. Because it is written, SAP, an enormous percentage of the public just pronounces it as the word sap.
Which, in English, means a foolish, gullible, or sad and pathetic person. And you better believe that their primary competitor in the database space, Oracle, absolutely loves using that phonetic pronunciation as a subtle, derogatory joke in their sales pitches.
You are handing your competitors ammunition. And it applies to short, punchy names, too.
Yeah.
There is a gourmet chocolate brand named TCHO, spelled PCHO.
It is visually jarring.
It looks exactly like a sneeze.
Ticho.
Less. You don't know if you should say TCHO or Ticho or taco. It causes a micro hesitation every single time someone tries to talk about it.
And finally, under the sin, we must address the bizarre phenomenon of backward names.
Oh, this one is baffling.
For some reason, in moments of desperation, founders think that spelling a normal word backward is a stroke of creative genius.
Right.
It is almost never genius. It usually results in unpronounceable garbage.
Serena Williams is undeniably one of the greatest, most powerful athletes in human history. She launched a clothing line, and she decided to name it Aneres, spelled A-N-E-R-E-S.
Right.
It is, of course, Serena spelled backward. The ego says, this is brilliant, it's literally me. But the market says, nobody knows how to speak this out loud.
Because it violates English phonetic structures. Is it pronounced Aneres? Is it Anereses? It lacks any rhythmic flow. It failed because it doesn't sound like a real word. It sounds like a typo.
But just to prove that there are exceptions to every rule if executed perfectly, look at Oprah Winfrey's production company. She used the exact same backward strategy. She named it Harpo.
Harpo works beautifully, and it is vital to understand why it works while Aneres failed.
Why is that?
Harpo perfectly adheres to standard English phonetics. It has a clear consonant-vowel structure. It is instantly pronounceable without a millisecond of hesitation.
Plus, it triggers existing neural pathways. It sounds like a real name, and it instantly conjures the imagery of Harpo marks. It feels familiar, nostalgic, and phonetically safe, even though it's a backward vanity name. It is the exception that proves the rule.
So the ultimate practical takeaway for this final sin is this. If your brand name requires punctuation as a phonetic crutch, if it relies on two different colored fonts to show the customer where the syllables break, or if it makes a human being hesitate for even a fraction of a second before speaking it out loud, it is a massive financial liability.
Wow. Okay, we have covered a truly massive amount of psychological and strategic ground today.
We really have.
We have tracked the panicked founder through every single misstep, and we have completely, thoroughly dismantled the toxic myth that any unique name is inherently a good name.
Let's synthesize everything we've uncovered. We have explored the life cycle of naming failures through the 7 deadly sins, all neatly organized into Alexandra Watkins' foundational acronym, SCRTCEH.
Right, let's run through it one more time. S, spelling challenged. Do not force your customer into a war with Siri, and don't make me guess if it's an S or a Z.
C, copycat. Put down the fake Rolex. Do not dilute your brand equity or invite a trademark lawsuit just to borrow someone else's authority.
R, restrictive. Do not trap your future strategic pivots in a tires-only box like Canadian Tire. Build a semantic umbrella.
A, annoying. Stop playing Dr. Frankenstein. Stop mashing syllables together and torturing basic grammar.
T, tame. Do not let fear force you into the cloud corridor. Unless you are a utilitarian subservice, you cannot afford to blend into the sea of sameness.
C, curse of knowledge. Put down the cryptographic private key. Remember the Salampaz decoder ring. Do not let your internal expertise alienate the beginner.
And finally, H, hard to pronounce. Do not trigger social anxiety. Do not make me order the decaf coffee because I'm terrified of mispronouncing the mofu.
Scratch. If you apply this framework rigorously, you will eliminate 90% of the friction that kills early-stage brands. And the absolute soul of this entire discussion can be distilled into one incredibly elegant, memorable rule of thumb.
What's that?
Ultimately, a brand name should make your customers smile. It should never make them scratch their head.
Make them smile, don't make them scratch.
If a potential name suffers from even a single one of these 7 deadly sins, you must be ruthless. Scratch it off the whiteboard immediately. Your brand's first impression, that microsecond of cognitive processing, is far too valuable to waste on an apology, a spelling lesson, or a pronunciation guide.
I absolutely love that. Make them smile, don't make them scratch their heads. Now, if you are sitting there listening to this deep dive, you're probably thinking, okay, I'm fully equipped. I know exactly what linguistic traps to avoid. But how do I actually secure the perfect, flawless .com domain name online without having to fork over $85,000 to some guy in a basement hoarding URLs?
It is the crucial next strategic step, and there are brilliant, highly effective methods to bypass the domain name extortion game entirely without compromising your brand.
Well, that is exactly the secret strategy we will be uncovering in our next deep dive. But before you log off today, I want to give you a piece of psychological homework.
Oh, I like homework.
I want you to unlock your phone right now and look at the apps on your home screen. Or just look around the room at the products sitting on your desk. Analyze them through this new lens. How many of those multi-million-dollar brands are secretly committing one of the 7 deadly sins?
Probably more than you think.
And more importantly, think back to the very first time you encountered them. Did that subtle phonetic friction, that tiny moment of cognitive dissonance, subconsciously affect how much you trusted them? Think about it.
What you just listened was the beginning of a full audio, way longer, explaining every single chapter of the book. If you would like to keep listening to the end and access to the full audio, you can access it with the link down below in the description and in the pinned comment.